you stay where you are comfortable, you're never going to grow, and you're going to stay the same. And that's the worst thing you can do, is just not grow and stay the same.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks Podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
One last thing before we get into today's episode. A lot of people ask how they can support the podcast. Well, I have a couple easy ways. The first way is just listen and subscribe. And another thing you can do is go follow the Roughnecks Podcast on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube as well. If you get something out of today's show, then do me a favor. Share it with a friend. If you really want to go above and beyond to support the podcast, then head over to roughneckspodcast.com and get you some of that merch. I appreciate all of the support, but let's get into today's episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Roughnecks Podcast. We are finally back on track. I think 3 episodes last week, but back on track. Sorry for the delay and like the random episodes. I was trying to without Wi-Fi and just dealt with a lot of different things that I was going on. But we're back on track. I have a guest for the first time this year. Actually, you are the first guest of the year. I haven't had a guest since December. All of January episodes and so far in February have been just me. But Elie Smith, welcome to the Roughnecks Podcast for episode.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're getting snowed in. Are you in Ohio right now?
No, I'm back home in Michigan.
You guys probably got even more snow than us then.
No, we got a little bit less, but I just figured like if we were gonna get a bunch of snow, I was either gonna be locked in my house all by myself, or I'd go home and hang out with the fam. So I came back on Tuesday night, just kind of beat the snow, and have been hanging out, about to go ice fishing later. So
I was gonna say, did you guys get the ice that we got here?
We didn't get the ice. No, we got a lot of snow, a little bit of ice, but no, not the ice like you guys got.
Yeah, because I think it was Wednesday. It literally rained all day.
Right.
I was at work and we're like, tomorrow is going to be miserable because it's supposed to get cold, and it's been nothing but ice. And then all last night it snowed, and now we just got snow on top of the ice. So it's just wonderful.
Right. Yeah, that's what I've been hearing.
So I like to kick off every episode by allowing the guests to give a background on themselves. So tell the Roughnecks listeners who you are, just kind of the basic rundown of who Elie is.
Yeah, so my name's Elie Smith. I'm from Fowlerville, Michigan, which is just about 25 minutes east of East Lansing. I played basketball throughout my whole life. That was kind of my deal growing up. And then I ended up going to play basketball at Cleveland State University. This is my first year not playing. By age, I'm a junior in college, but I'll be graduating in August with a finance degree. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to get into the real world a little bit.
Don't be too excited. Trust me, it's not that good. I'm just graduated in May, and it's nice and all, and then it also sucks at the exact same time. But
right, I got you.
So I gotta ask first off, coming from Michigan to Ohio, me and you have actually talked about this, but I had to bring it up on the podcast. There's always that Michigan-Ohio hatred, but you almost hate that Michigan side of things too, don't you?
Oh yeah, I grew up right next to Michigan State, so I'm a huge I grew up a really big Michigan State fan. So the kind of bridge between me and the Ohio people is, my enemy is my friend. So I mean, that's kind of the middle ground I catch with all the Ohio people.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird thing that like people don't understand if they don't come from Ohio or Michigan. Like when you come from Ohio and somebody is like says Michigan, like you have people that will refuse that word in their house or whatever. Like I'm not that extreme. Like I mean, it's a game. It is an awesome game, but it's not that big of a deal. Like I'm not the one actually playing in it or anything, but like, it is a crazy how people handle it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's the real deal, man. And especially those rivalry weekends. Like Michigan was just playing Michigan State in basketball. I think it was last weekend, and I was just out watching it with my friends, and my boyfriend's actually from Ohio, so he's kind of like in a weird. We're all Michigan State fans for the most part, so he's like, I don't really know how to act, but yeah, it's crazy, just especially those weeks when they're playing each other, especially football. It's there's nothing really like it around here.
It is it's funny, like coming from the Ohio perspective, you almost look at it like I can root for Michigan State easier than I can root for Michigan. I don't know
Right,
why, but for some reason I can root for Michigan State a lot easier than Michigan.
right, yeah, that's pretty common.
But one of the main things that I wanted to talk to you today about was you're an outdoor person yourself, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely,
Because
yeah, 100
you
percent.
just said you were going ice fishing here later or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Me and you have talked before about because you just recently kind of started getting into the hunting side of things because you never had the time for it per se, correct?
Right. So I grew up fishing my whole life. Big bass fishing, walleye, uh, just pretty much just bass and walleye is my thing. But I never really had the time to hunt because I was in the basketball thing growing up, like so immersed in it. And I mean, I wouldn't trade it because it ended up pretty well. I ended up, getting my school paid for. But the past couple years, so like with COVID last year, we got sent home from school for COVID outbreaks, whatever. So I got time home and I got to get in the woods for the first time last year. And last year was kind of just like dipping my toe in it a little bit, figuring it out. I haven't really gone hunted that much, but I'm more into like crossbows. But anyways, this year I went out a lot more since I wasn't really playing anymore. So I got my first buck on Halloween, which was really cool. So yeah,
Really
I'm
good time to
just
get buck too.
yeah, right, that late October, yeah. So it was really cool. It's kind of one thing, like now that I'm not playing basketball, my eyes have been open to so many other things. I wish I could keep playing, but at the same time, there's so much positive that's came out of it that it's just God's plan. So
Exactly. It's almost time for that. Like you never know exactly what to expect, but it's that next chapter of life, and sometimes it sucks at the same like it sucks, but it's what's needed at the same time.
oh yeah, absolutely. It's yeah, growing up, like I didn't have that much balance in my life as uh, middle school, high school, and I think that's the case for a lot of kids too that are really into sports, but it was just basketball, 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 and I just really wasn't into anything else. And then once I got hurt, it was like, okay, not only just like activities I like to do, but just like career wise, I've been able to like figure out things I want to do next. And there's been a lot of good that's came out of it. So I'm just going with the flow.
Yeah, exactly. And you talked about, you've figured out career wise because now I look back, I didn't even really think about it, but I look back when I was in college and like I became so immersed in football that I almost forgot. Like, it's not that I forgot about school, but I was like, what am I doing after school? Because I just like would think about the sport and wouldn't think about like the next chapter. Cause I knew after college football was done. I was not going to go to the professional and be at that level, but I was also like, I never really actually sat down and thought, like, what am I doing next?
Right, absolutely. And I think with me being hurt, because I mean, I blew up my knee 3 straight years in a row. So I mean, after like the second time, I was like last year, I was kind of started to think like, okay, like I have a lot of time. Think like because we couldn't really do anything during when COVID was big last year. So I was just sitting in my house thinking like, like what am I doing with my time? So like that was a blessing for me just to kind of take that step past sports, like thinking past sports, which not a lot of student athletes get to do. Which that's a blessing in itself. So
I want to go back to the outdoors thing for a second before we get too far into this other stuff. But we talked about fishing, and I was gonna ask you what your favorite thing to fish for, but you already answered that. And one of the things that I think is underrated about Michigan itself is the amount of lakes that you guys have and places like the great fishing that you guys have there.
oh, absolutely, yeah. So there's my family, we actually have a cabin in northern Michigan, just south of Houghton Lake. Not super far up north, like not quite to the UP, but yeah, the fishing's just unreal, especially northern Michigan. there's just, you know, whatever you want to fish for, there's something around. You can't drive 5 miles without going past the lake. So, but yeah, I've basically done most of my fishing at the lake that my parents have a cabin on. Big bass, walleye, perch, panfish, all that good stuff. So I haven't really done much fishing in the Great Lakes. Like I've been on a salmon charter when I was like 10, but it's mainly just like the inland lakes that I've been exploring. And this is actually my first year ice fishing, kind of the same reason that I haven't been able to hunt in the past. I haven't really ice fished at all until this year. So that's a whole other thing I've been learning. It's a lot different.
It's crazy how, hunting, fishing, all of this stuff, and like when you first get into it, you're like, yeah, but then it becomes such an addiction, I feel like. Because
Oh
the
yeah,
same way with as you, I didn't have the time. I was playing basketball in high school and like all growing up. And then I also had football in college. So I never had time to like come home and hunt or like really do much hunting. I got usually one weekend a year, and that was the most time I got. But then my senior year was the COVID year. So like we didn't have a season in the fall. We had a season in the spring, but we didn't have a season in the fall. Had nothing on the weekends. So every single weekend from college, I would drive home my senior year and hunt. And I'd drive home at Friday after my last class or after lifting or whatever it was, get up Saturday morning, hunt Saturday evening, hunt Sunday morning, hunt Sunday evening, drive back to campus, do the same thing every single week. There may have been
right.
a couple times I may have actually skipped class on Friday, but we won't
Yeah,
talk
hey,
about
who doesn't, right?
that. Well, I remember I got a text from my one of my buddy he's a real big hunter, and he shoots nice deer every year, and he texted me and he goes, "Hey, if you can get out Friday, you need to go out." And I was like, "I have class like 11." He goes, "You need to get out." And I'm like, "All right, I'll just skip class, whatever." Drove
Right.
home, hunted Friday
Yeah.
morning, ended up shooting an 8 point that walked in, but it was a bad shot.
Nice.
You have it when you hunt. It was a bad shot. I
Right.
missed the shot. It was the first time I've ever actually shot at a buck, so I was real
Oh,
nervous.
gotcha.
And it was compound bow, so it was just a lot
Oh,
of
okay.
factors that came into it. But it's crazy how like it becomes such an addiction. Like I was driving home every weekend just to hunt, just to sit in a tree, not even knowing if I'd see a single thing.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I've been when I started hunting last year. Really, it's this has been like my first real season hunting. And you go out and you're sitting in the stand, and you're like, this is great. Like I'm outside, like whatever. And then it's a whole other game. Like when you actually get a
Mm.
deer. So like, you know, I hit the one, I actually hit a doe a couple weeks earlier. I got it in the shoulder blade, and I never tracked it for 2.5 hours. Never had a nice blood trail for 2.5 hours. Didn't find it. A couple weeks later, I get my buck, and it went a little ways. It probably went 30, 40 yards, but uh, tracked it. But we were so far from the barn that I called my buddy and I was like, "Hey, I just got this buck. You want to come help me drag this thing?" So he was there in like 5 minutes, and we dragged it, hung it, and then the whole processing thing. There's just a whole other side to hunting that you don't really get to experience until you've actually gotten a deer.
And it
So
makes
it
that
was
side
cool
of
this year.
things,
I
I
got the
think,
full
also makes you
experience.
appreciate it too. Like it
Oh
makes you
yeah,
appreciate because people hunting is gets a bad name sometimes, but I feel like that makes like when you go through the whole process of harvesting a deer or any animal really, like it makes you truly appreciate what you do. It's not like people are like, oh, how can you just go kill an animal? Like, first off, there is a major over deer population that people do not realize. And
absolutely. Yep.
at least like people like us, like we use the meat. It's not like we just like shoot it and let it lay. Like we're
Right.
using it to like feed, like to eat, and there's a good side of it, and it makes like going through the whole process definitely makes you appreciate it so much more. And then going through that, and then like once you now that you've harvested one, and I'm sure you felt it even on the first one, if you make a bad shot, even if that deer dies, you hate it. You want to make that
Right.
as quick and painless as possible for them. Like you feel so bad if that's what I don't think people understand. They're like, oh, you don't care. Like, no, we do feel bad if it's not quick and painful or quick and
Right.
painless or like we
Right.
find the deer.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely like if you're hunting right, it's a big respect thing. Like that, if you don't respect the animal, you probably shouldn't be hunting.
Exactly.
It's and like I look at it as God put animals on this earth for us to hunt and harvest, and that's, what we're going to do. And, we're not going to torture animals. We're just going to go do as God intended. And, that's just how it is. But yeah, it's a amazing experience for sure.
100%. So let's talk about the athletic side of things a little bit. I want to talk to you originally. Why did you choose Cleveland State? First off, is what I want to ask.
So, growing up, let's see, I got my first offer my freshman year from St. Bonaventure. Then it was kind of a little slow after that. And then like the D2s started rolling in, like pretty much every D2 in the state was like, if you're interested, just like give us a call. But then like the D1 started coming in. Like I talked to Central Michigan, Youngstown State, let's see, Albany. Those were kind of like the last ones. NJIT out in New Jersey. And actually what happened was I was and then Cleveland State obviously was in that mix. And then I was kind of undecided for a while, and then actually Youngstown State really started to kind of be the lead, my favorite. And a couple days actually before I was going to verbal to them, I broke my ankle in a high school scrimmage. It was stupid. I probably shouldn't have even been playing. So then most of my offers went away, except Cleveland State was still talking to me, which was a really big green flag for me, is that they still were interested in me and they just didn't like leave me out to dry pretty much like everybody else. And, I talked to them, still didn't have an offer from them, but was, in good talks. I saw that once kind of all my offers started to go away, I saw that they had an elite camp. I think it was the next weekend. So I went to the elite camp the next weekend, did really well, and kind of built that relationship. Past that, got an offer a couple weeks later. Actually, I got offered by Cleveland State in the airport going to New Jersey for an official visit, which was kind of funny because my head coach heard that I was getting on a plane to go to an official visit, and he called me as I was going through security, which is kind of a funny story. But it was, and once I got that offer, it was so close to home, and they maintained consistent through the whole recruiting process, and the girls were great, and it really felt like a good fit.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how far away from home is that for you?
It's exactly 3 hours, and it's
like
a really easy drive too. I come home all the time.
I was gonna say, I feel like it makes it nice because that's I was a little closer. I was 45 minutes away from home, but I also looked at it. I feel like it's somewhat the same for you. Like I can be home if I need to be, but I'm
Right.
also away from home that I'm not at home anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how it was. And honestly, like when I was making my decision, like I really wish I just, I had an option like super close to home, because like I love it where I live. And if you would have told me I'd be living in downtown Cleveland, Ohio, my senior year of high school, if you would have told me that, I probably would look at you funny. But it's been it's worked out for the best for sure.
Cleveland's definitely interesting. That's needless to say, Cleveland is interesting.
Yeah, that's a place. Let me tell you, there was some definite culture shock going to Cleveland especially when I first got there. Sometimes I'm still down there and I see things and I'm like, that's crazy. But yeah, I can go on and on. But
Well, give me the craziest thing that you think you've seen in Cleveland.
well, so I have a house. I bought a house down there last September. And yeah, September 2020. So then the following spring, I was sitting on my porch, doing homework on the computer, which is weird because like I've never sat on my porch and do homework, but for some reason I decided that day. And all of a sudden, 7 like black SUVs pull up to my neighbor's house, and like guns aimed, like and raided my neighbor's house, like full FBI. Like it was probably 20-30 police officers going into the house, and it wasn't my neighbors that were doing anything wrong. They actually had squatters in their house. So it was one of those situations. But yeah, I was just sitting there and like all of a sudden there's a bunch of FBI agents aiming automatic weapons at this house, going in, busting on the door. it was pretty crazy.
As you're sitting there, like, I'm just trying to do homework. I don't.
Yeah, I didn't even know what to do. Like, I got a pretty cool video of it, but it was yeah, I was, like, sitting there. That was, like, the craziest thing I've ever seen.
So you've dealt with a lot of injuries, and that's something that we've brought up on this podcast, like with many guests. A lot of my guests have dealt with injuries. How many injuries have you gone through?
Well, like, high school, I had a couple. Like, high school, like, my freshman year, I, like, broke my toe for some I don't know how I did it, but I did, and I played my whole freshman season on it. And then, like, I've always had, like, aches and pains that always happen. Um, and then I broke my ankle the summer going into my senior year of high school, which I completely recovered from. It wasn't a big deal. But my freshman year of college, I got there. We have workouts all summer, so I got there in June of my yeah June of 2019. I got to Cleveland, and 2 weeks later, so like the 4th of July weekend, I tore my patellar tendon. After like 2 weeks of practice, which is great. And then I kind of
Sorry
rehabbed
to
it.
hear you're right there.
Yeah, right. So, and it wasn't a full tear, so they were like, okay, you can probably just rehab it for a few months and you'll be ready to rock. But that's not how it went, and I ended up getting injections and like just throwing the kitchen sink at it basically before surgery. But they it was decided that surgery is probably the move since it wasn't getting any better. And I was actually supposed to get surgery a lot earlier than I did. I was supposed to get it in November, but I ended up getting like a really bad case of mono early October that like I didn't really recover from until like start of December. So that pushed my surgery back and kind of wiped out my whole season.
Mm.
And then of course COVID hit in 2020, and March of 2020 is actually when I was like going to be cleared from my surgery. So I was doing rehab at home, because we were all stuck at home. So I was just, doing the things that my trainer was sending me. And then I know a lot of girls in the area that have went and played college basketball. So since we were all home, it was weird. Like we were all home during the summer. So like we started playing pickup, at a local park with really nice courts, and we'd play 2 or 3 times a week. And, I was feeling really good. Like I felt like myself again for the first time in forever. And then when we got back to campus, that'd been like late August, early September of 2020. A couple weeks later, I blew it out again. And then that kind of wiped out that season. And then I basically did the same thing last September. Yeah, September, August, maybe. So yeah, I pretty much did the same injury, tore it again, and then basically the doctor was like, yeah, you're probably not going to be able to play again, and if you do, you're going to only be able to practice like twice a week. You probably won't ever just be able to see game time. And then so that's when I got medically DQ'd, which basically means like I'm still on scholarship. I'm still I still go to school there. I'm just not with the team anymore for medical reasons.
How did you handle that? Because I'm sure that wasn't something that's easy. And like, how did you handle going through all those injuries and, and then eventually being told, hey,
Yeah.
you're pretty much done?
Right. Yeah. So at first it was really hard. So my freshman year of college, like a lot of people's freshman year of college, was shitty. It was bad.
Well, yes.
Yeah,
Everyone.
like I'm pretty I haven't heard the story of anyone that said my freshman year of college was so much it's from a student athlete perspective. My freshman year of college was so much, but it really never is. But yeah, so my freshman year, that was really hard because like I said, like in high school, basketball was like all I cared about. That was my thing. So I grew up a lot my freshman year of college for sure. Kind of started, giving me that perspective, like if you put all your eggs in the same basket with this game, it's probably not going to end up well for you because everyone is told at some point that they can't play anymore. So that was my freshman year. It kind of helped me a lot. And then the next year when, it was Corona time and it wasn't like a real season. Like it was just such a botched season. Like games were getting canceled left and right, kind of similar to how this year is. And I wasn't playing, which like it still sucked that I wasn't playing, but like it made it a little easier that like it wasn't the same. Like my family wasn't going to be able to come see me play anyways. And then at the same time, that's like kind of when I started looking past basketball and seeing like, it's bright, the grass is green, definitely greener on the other side. So, I just started, learning as much as I can about what I want to do and, getting a head start on all of that. So, there's, it was hard not to play, but I definitely saw the silver lining.
It's so cliche, and people might give me crap for it, and they have gave me crap for it, but I am a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. It is the most cliche saying, but like everything that happens to us, like it changes or it affects who we are and helps us, good or bad. Well, good or bad. If it's bad, we could let it hurt us, but like everything's there for a learning lesson, good and bad. It doesn't matter what it is. Everything's a learning lesson, and like this may have been just that sign, like, hey, it's time to focus on the career side of things more. And like, trust me, I like I already said, I wish I would have looked at my career side of things because now I have a degree that I don't even use. I have
Right.
yet
Yeah.
to use, and I look at it like what I could have like at least put my degree towards something that like I would have used more, but I also didn't know what I was going to do after college because I never actually took the time to sit down and figure out what I plan to do. I was just like, well, I have this degree, it should help me. And but so you're on a good track already of actually figuring out what you want to do. And I think taking a step away from the student athlete side of things, the athletic side of things, because we can get so consumed in the athletic side of things that we forget about the student side of things.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's been, you know, it's hard. Like, I'll be at games or whatever, and like I'll be sitting there, and I'm like a big part of me wishes I was out there, but then I walk out of the arena and I go home and I think about it, and it's like, what? I have a lot ahead of me. So you can't dwell on the past. I've so much, so much ahead that it's a waste to be upset at what's already happened.
I like the one thing you said right there that you said can't dwell on the past. That's a
Right.
big thing that everyone needs to remember because I feel like so many of us, we all do it at some point. Some of us continue to do it too, is we get stuck on the past. We get stuck on things that happen or we hang on to, things too long and let it affect our future when if we would have let go like we should have earlier, we would have like it helps advance where we're going.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on with that for sure.
I do have to ask, I saw it on your Instagram. The Miles Garrett comment. Was that a Miles Garrett comment? Was it your friend that posted it and then commented on that, or tell me the story behind it?
Yeah. So my teammate Izzy and I, we're I mean, we like to lift, like we're pretty strong kids, like whatever. And everyone always like we'd walk into practice and everyone, makes comments about, like how strong we are, whatever. So someone told us like take a picture, like of us flexing on media day, whatever. And so like we do it, and then I'm looking, and I'm like we're talking about that whole circumstance where like Miles Garrett didn't wear sleeves for a game, then got drug tested, and we were just laughing about it in the locker room. And like I made the picture of like with the tweet in the corner, and like I put it on our picture, and like I sent it to Izzy, and Izzy posted it because like Izzy has a lot more followers than I do. I was like, you should do it, So she posted it and tagged Miles Garrett, and then Miles Garrett actually like commented on it and liked it, and it was we were freaking out because like Miles Garrett's definitely my favorite player on the Browns, and so it was and Izzy's a huge Browns fan, so it was just we were running around the locker room freaking out. It was a fun time.
I saw it and I had to bring it up because of the fact that I've actually the guy that creates Miles Garrett's videos currently, I went to college with him and he's been on this podcast twice. And he's
Oh,
like, I
that's
had to
awesome.
bring it up. So, because of the fact of Carter Franklin, he actually works for the NFL now and works with Miles, but he's an awesome dude. And it's just funny that Miles Garrett, and I mean, it's Miles Garrett's, if you get a comment from Miles Garrett, like, I feel like for anybody like that to actually comment on your picture, like
Right.
you actually were
Yeah.
like it means something. And the fact that you guys were wearing the Cleveland State uniforms probably definitely
Yeah.
helped it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was funny. It's like it's just a silly little thing, but like we had a lot of fun with it, which is really cool. And
Those
whenever
silly
like I'm
things
watching,
mean a lot to us, though. That's what's weird.
right. Yeah. So like whenever I'm at like with my parents or whatever, and we're watching football, and like Myles Garrett comes on, and my mom will be like, "Hey, there's your friend," or like, "Hey, you know him." It's just it's just a funny little thing, but yeah, it was pretty cool. We were pretty excited.
Yeah, I do that same thing where I've had, people who are now in the NFL. I've had Carter, and I'll see him on TV. And I'm like, hey, I know them. Yeah, I,
Yeah,
I talked to them
right.
one time. Not a big
Yeah,
deal. But something that we have not a mutual connection, but something that I relate to in a way. You're a Yee Yee athlete, or we're a Yee Yee athlete.
yeah,
Correct?
retired now, but yeah.
So how did that actually come about? Because I know, like, once the NIL thing went into play, but who contacted who, and how? I didn't even know how the Yee thing worked, or how any of that stuff worked exactly.
Yeah, so everybody, so like when that NIL thing dropped, like it was like Barstool Athlete was like the big deal at first, which is cool. Like I like Barstool, like it's whatever, but like everyone was doing that one, and like I just wasn't like really super interested. Like it's whatever, it's cool, but and I wasn't like I hadn't played college basketball, like so I got played 2 minutes and 32 seconds my whole career. Like I'm not trying to get some like big whatever. And but I like saw like I follow Yee on Instagram or whatever, and I follow them, and they were doing like this like Yee Athletes thing. So like I followed that account, and like I'm at the gym or something, and like all of a sudden I see like Yee what apparel like DM'd you, or Yee Athletes DM'd you, and it had like the blue check on it. So like it was, because when I first read it, I was like, okay, it's probably just like people make
Somebody
those accounts all
trying to
the time.
scam.
Right. But it like had the blue check on it, and I was like, holy shit. So like I open it, and they're like, yeah, we're doing like this Yee Athletes thing, like fill this out, and like you get whatever the promo code or whatever it was, like if you order gear, and like if other people use your code, you get some kickback to it. But yeah, it was just a cool thing. I mean, it's not like you make crazy money off of it, or you get Granger Smith's phone number or anything, but like it's just a fun little thing.
That's what I understand that, because I look at, I try to get, sometimes I'm starting to work on that, like almost it's basically an affiliate program. That's all they're doing. And
Right, absolutely.
they look at it as it helps them, but it helps us more. And like I've tried to get a few people, and they're like, yeah, maybe, but I'm like, all right. I know this is gonna it takes a while to get into it, but like a big brand like that, it's also just cool that they messaged you. It makes you like, you're like, oh damn, this is kind of cool, because I've actually had 4 Yee guys on this podcast. Granger Smith's
Yeah,
store manager, his
right.
bus
Yep.
drivers, and Hayden, who probably was the one who messaged you, to be honest. But yeah,
Gotcha.
it is. I feel like it was just an awesome feeling to have, like, somebody, even though you barely played or anything, but like just somebody
Right.
appreciate it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was cool. I thought it was different too, because like it's a outdoors brand for
Hmm.
so, and like
I
I
feel like
said,
it
like the
suits you
Barstool.
very well.
Right. Right. Like that's my thing, and there's not a lot of people like that was on my team that likes that kind of stuff. So it was kind of unique in that way. But yeah, I mean, it was a cool thing. Like it's definitely a good marketing tactic on their end. Like get these kids to say they're a Yee athlete, and they share your shit everywhere, and like but it's cool for the athlete too. Like that, you're connected to them, and it's a great Christian brand, and I was happy to be a part of it for the time.
Exactly. So I want to ask this question before we go into the break, but the one question I got real quick is, what is your favorite basketball memory of all time?
Favorite basketball memory of all time. That's probably my junior. Either so I kind of have two, because they're
You can have
kind of
two.
on the
I'll
same
accept
level.
two.
All right. So probably my junior year, so I'm from a town that doesn't really have a historic basketball program. And we actually won our district against our rival that was predicted to beat us by 20. We ended up beating them by 20, and it was like the first trophy of any kind that our basketball program had gotten in like 18 years. And it was like a huge upset, and like our whole town was in the gym, and it was just a really cool experience. And like most of my friends that I played basketball with were a year older than me, and it was my junior year, their senior year. So like we were all there for it. And then like the other one is probably when my AU team won the Nike tournament in Atlanta. And it was our last ever tournament together, and we've been playing together since we were 6th grade. So it's pretty cool to go out and win the Nike tournament in Atlanta for our last game together. So that was they're probably on the same level.
Those are both good ones. And we're going to go into the break real quick, and then I have a few more questions before we get into the best segment of the podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by roughneckspodcast.com. If you want to support the podcast, then head over to roughneckspodcast.com and grab you some of that Roughnecks merch. We have everything from t-shirts, long sleeves, sweatshirts, hats, and many more. Stay up to date on the website for new merch coming every couple months. You can place an order and it'll get sent directly to your door, and I don't even take any of the money from it. The money gets put right back into the podcast to continue to improve it for you. If you can't afford to buy some merch this time, then simply just subscribe to the newsletter, and it'll keep you up to date on all the new things that are coming. I appreciate all of the support you guys give. It doesn't go unnoticed. Let's get back to today's episode. All right, we're back. And the one, I don't know how I didn't even think of it, because like I played it myself, but AAU, I don't even know how I didn't even think to ask you questions about AAU. You talked about, you guys played for how long together?
So we played 6th and 7th grade, and then 8th and 9th grade, we kind of went on our own ways because our coach had an older son that was really good, and he had to coach him until he was graduated. But then we came back together our last 2 years. And yeah, we played for 4 out of the last 6 years at AU together. But yeah, we're super close team. Honestly, I have a lot better AU experience than high school experience. Let's just say that. But
I think there's too much politics side of things. Like,
oh yeah,
parents get involved so much in high school, and everybody knows everybody. And
right.
the AAU, it's like, listen, you got to either be good or you're not, and
right.
No in between. And you can only have a certain amount of. I'm assuming it's the same in Michigan. You can only have a certain amount of players from the same school on one team for AAU.
I think that's a rule. I've never really ran into that issue, but I do think it might be,
because I know in Ohio,
at least,
I believe you're fine up until high school. Once you hit high school level, you have to it's 2 players max from each high school. So basically, you can't have like a high school team playing AAU all they're playing year round. But
right, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So who did you play for, if you don't mind me asking?
So I played for Michigan Triple Threat. We were actually, it was kind of cool because we were all Lansing kids. Like none of us lived in Lansing, but just like the outskirts of Lansing. Yeah, we're all area kids, which at the level we were playing is pretty rare because like a lot of times at that point we're playing like EYBL teams that pick kids from a bunch of different states. And not that we always beat those EYBL teams, but we beat a good amount of them and hung with the ones we didn't beat. And we were just a fucking awesome squad. Like the girls on it were just, it was not very typical of what you'd expect out of AU, because a lot of times AU is you're always hopping around trying to find a different team, and it can kind of get really slimy. But like all the parents were friends, all the kids were friends. We it was party at the hotel after games, and it was all hanging out together in between games. There was no drama. It was just like our coach basically, he was a great coach. He's probably my favorite coach I've had. And but he, we all knew what we were doing. We got down to business. So he kind of just gave us the reins for most of it, and we just played ball. There was no one had any outside motives. It was just playing ball, having fun, and we were all good. So it was just a really, really good experience.
Yeah, I can agree. Look, my AAU times, because before I fell in love with football, because I didn't really fall in love with football until my sophomore year of high school, because that's when I got to play varsity football on a Friday night, and I was like, oh, I kind of like this. But like basketball was my sport. Like I used to spend all day, like every single weekend, like my parents used to hate it, but I used to go down in the basement and dribble for hours on end. And like my mom told me, she goes, you could hear like over time, you
Right.
gradually got better at it. And I was like, well,
Yeah,
at least I got better at it. But she was like, yeah, you like, and like it was my sport, but AAU was some of the most fun that I ever had playing basketball because like I feel like you don't have the school drama per se. Like you're not bringing all that
for
outside of
sure.
it. And it's just like, you know what? Hey, we're friends. We're here to do the same thing. And it was just like I feel like everybody was way more loose in AAU compared to like school ball. Not saying that school ball or AAU is better, whatever one, but
Right. It totally
I think I
depends on
had
your
more fun.
experience.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because
for
I had
sure.
different
Yeah,
experiences. I went through two different head coaches. Yeah, two different head coaches in high school. And like I had a different experience with both of them. So like it
right.
depends a lot on the coach but like you have different experiences in high school depending on where you play, who you play for, things like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I had a lot of great moments in high school too, because I still the girls not all of them, but a lot of the girls I play with, are still my best friends, from my school. And there's a lot of good that came out of it, but like I'm glad it's done. But it wasn't all bad. It's a small town, so there's the small town shit that everybody has to deal with. And AU was my escape from that because there's no bullshit. It was just, we all knew we were all good. All of us had either went and played college basketball or had the choice to. And it was just, it was like you said, it was loose. We were just playing ball. It was like there's no like all these plays you have to remember, and we're gonna run this play, and you have to like run applesauce. No, run banana. Like it's none of that shit. It's just go play ball. You guys are good basketball players, and that's what we did. And we tore it up for years, which was so much fun. Just traveling the country and you know finding the best competition and giving it to them. So it was awesome.
See, I didn't travel like you. I didn't because I the last year I played AAU was my eighth grade year. I played in sixth grade, then played in eighth grade, and then football happened, so I started focusing on that. But how much did you travel? Because you guys made a lot more traveling. So like, what else did you guys go play out of state a lot, or was it a lot of in-state stuff and then here and there some out of state stuff?
Yeah, so like so there's like a recruiting period in July that we definitely go out of state for. But early, so like after high school season ended, about a month after that, we'd play some like local tournaments, like tune-up tournaments, just like in Lansing or Grand Rapids, maybe just something local. But then when it was the recruiting period, we'd be on the road for 10, 12 days, hopping to tournament to tournament. So I think I could have this wrong, but I'm pretty sure we went from Chicago to Indianapolis to Atlanta. I think that was last year. I could have that totally wrong, but I've hit those spots, at some point. But yeah, the big hot spots that we went was Atlanta, Chicago. We went to Chicago a lot. Toledo, Indianapolis.
I was gonna say Indy, I know is a big one because
Yeah,
they have a bunch of, especially with the convention center there in downtown
right,
Indianapolis.
right. And Washington D.C. We went. Fort Wayne. I think
Where was
that's
your
pretty
favorite
much the
place
hot
that you
spots.
played? If you, I
That's
mean, or your favorite memory or whatever. Because I feel like
favorite place that I've played. That's a good question. Um, Chicago was cool because like they'd set up uh like the basketball courts in like ballrooms. So like you'd walk in and like the light that was shining on the court was like a chandelier with diamonds on it, and like you're playing basketball under it, and you're like, holy shit, like this is ridiculous. But yeah, that was a really cool thing. Favorite like actual place though, I mean, it wasn't AAU, but I went to Duke's elite camp
mm,
my sophomore year, and it was pretty cool. And like that's like right when I started to first like kind of get like my jump of athletic ability. So I was always like I got to like grab the rim at Cameron Indoor, which is probably one of my biggest memories from that
still
time.
gonna say it, but go Tar Heels, and that's okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty impartial on the whole thing. It was just it was cool to play at Cameron.
Oh, that'd be an awesome experience.
Yeah, it was so favorite So that's probably the favorite place I've ever played was probably Cameron.
Last question I got is biggest piece of advice you could give to somebody who wants to go play college basketball.
There's a lot of sacrifice. Especially basketball, the big recruiting things are in the summer, so you're gonna have, there's a lot less summer vacation. There's gonna be people that have, they pass the eye test more than you. Like I run funny and I'm not proportional, so I never passed that eye test, so I had to overcome that. But yeah, there's always gonna be more athletic than you that, are better than you. But you just knows the grindstone and just you got to grind at it because it really is up to you. I truly believe that pretty much anybody can do it. It's really just up to how it's cliche, but it's really just up to how bad you want it.
Exactly. And I think that is a great way to lead us into this segment of the podcast, which is Motivation Monday. Motivation Monday is the point in the episode where I allow the guests to give the Roughnecks listeners a little inspirational bump to set the tone for their week as they listen on Monday morning. So what does Elie have for Motivation Monday?
So I don't know if this is an actual Joe Rogan quote, but I'd heard it on his podcast. I'm a big Joe Rogan fan. It's hard times make strong men make easy times, and easy times make weak men. And I think that's probably one of the best things I've ever heard is, you're not going to become stronger and if you're not outside your comfort zone. And if you stay where you are comfortable, you're never going to grow, and you're going to stay the same. And that's the worst thing you can do is just not grow and stay the same.
Exactly. I like that you brought, I think, I'm pretty sure I don't know if it is actually a Joe Rogan, but I've posted Joe Rogan saying it on my Instagram, the Roughnecks Instagram. So
Yeah.
That's where I originally heard it too. And it is a great quote. Like it's something that I've actually kept. I've actually thought about making an episode about it, but it's something that like it is very true. And you said like you got to be okay with being uncomfortable, essentially is what you were saying. Like you got to get out of your comfort zone. We talk about it all the time on this podcast. If you do not get out of your comfort zone, you will never grow. And like I have a lot of things personally right now that I'm like, I'm comfortable with where I'm at. I'm comfortable with where I'm at. And then like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, wait, you gotta take a step out of this. And otherwise you're gonna be stuck in the same thing. If you want to continue to grow, if you want to continue to be better, you have to like step out of that comfort zone and overcome that uncomfortable situation because eventually it's going to become comfortable and then you're going to have to find something else to step out of the comfort zone of.
Absolutely, for sure.
But I think that's a good way to wrap up this episode. Thank you, Elie, so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people follow you on social media if you want them
to? So my Instagram is at Elie Smith 11 and my Twitter is at Elie Smith 24.
But with that, that's a wrap on the 75th episode of the Roughnecks podcast. I cannot believe that we are 75 episodes into this podcast. 3/4 of the way to 100. Still got to figure out something cool to do for episode 100. Fast Friday will be this Friday, Fast Friday number 2. Tell me what you guys thought of Fast Friday number 1 and 2 or whatever. But I know I said any episode ending in 6 would consist of Friday beers, new thing that we're going to implement. But that will not start until episode 86. I still have a few things that I need to figure out and finish up with that. Start sending your questions in for Q&A Friday because episode 80 is coming up. Start sending those questions over to roughneckspodcast@gmail.com. Actually, Elie, I'm putting you on the spot. I forgot to tell you about this, but I ask all of my guests now. So we have Q&A Friday every 10 episodes where me and a guest we'll sit here and answer questions from the fans. And now I'm asking all of my guests to submit one question for that episode. So what question do you have for Q&A Friday? It could be about anything and everything. It could be simple. It could be deep. It could be whatever.
What question do I have for Q&A Friday? That's a good one. Let's see. Biggest thing that you learned in 2021?
Ooh. All right, that's gonna be a good one. My guest is gonna hate me because he told me no super deep questions. Not that that's super deep, but that's something he's gonna be like, dude, I told you nothing like that. Yeah, whatever. But anyway, that's a wrap on today's episode of the Roughnecks podcast. Until Friday, y'all know the deal. Life is hard. It's gonna knock you down just like a bull does to a bull rider. Don't let the bull of life walk all over you. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Roughnecks out. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of the Roughnecks podcast. If you liked today's episode, then be sure to subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with a friend if you got some value from it. Head over to social media and follow the Roughnecks podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Don't forget to get you some of that merch by heading over to roughneckspodcast.com and subscribe to the newsletter while you're there. See y'all next week. Roughnecks out.